Okay, this is for people who follow the sport of boxing. It's the first of two videos I'm going to make tonight, and there is a risk I'll be repeating myself in this from videos I've made previously. But what I sometimes do is I don't mind repetition, because what I'll do is review my videos and just maybe edit them occasionally and keep the one which I feel is better. So, what I want to speak about here is something that I've got quite strong views on, as both a boxing fan and someone who has been interested in pursuing at least an amateur career. I've only had one fight, so I can't really call myself a boxer per se, but I've done boxing, I've done sparring and so on, and anyway, this isn't about me. Point is, I'm a boxing fan, and I want to speak about a certain type of fan out there, which I believe is quite widespread, and it's something that I've always observed as I've followed the sport, and I've been following the sport of boxing for years, and on some level for at least 10 years, quite closely for 4 or 5 years. So I'd say I know quite a lot about boxing. Yeah, so I want to speak about a certain type of fan. And you see these people, I was going to say these guys, I suppose I should say these people in the interests of gender equality, but I do believe it's more guys. I think female fans tend to be actually more respectful, in my experience, because the sort of trash talking I'm talking about here, or I'm going to talk about, has mostly come from male fans. Generally, in my experience, female fans tend to be more respectful overall. That's just an observation. So yeah, what I've seen from these guys is just, it depresses me and it angers me, and sometimes I think, well, am I following the wrong sport? Am I being too sensitive with this? But then I think, wait a second, this isn't about sensitivity, it's about decency and about just being a decent human being. Now, what I'm getting at here is that there's a massive amount of disrespect online from some so-called fans. Massive. Go to virtually any boxing video, most boxing videos, and I guarantee you will come across one comment, or several, calling some fighter a bum, or some fighter who's a tomato can, or these sort of slurs. And it's almost inevitable that you see this crap. My stance on it is like what Oscar de la Hoya said. The great Oscar de la Hoya said that it doesn't matter if you are a multiple world champion or you're stepping into the ring for the first time. It takes guts to enter the ring. Now, that goes without saying. I know it does, because I've been through it. The problem I have with a lot of these people is either they haven't done it themselves, or if they have done it themselves and they are amateur boxers, then they should have some understanding. They're not bringing anything to the sport by trash talking fighters in this way. Now, there's a few things I want to make clear. Number one, I'm not talking about all fans, because that would be pretty snobby and arrogant of myself if I was to dismiss all other fans. There's many fans out there who are decent people and who do understand that there's a certain red line and they have a level of respect. But I do believe there's an enormous amount of fans, and I'm not going to say these people don't know about boxing. I'm not going to say they don't know the details, for example, or the anthropology of it. I'm not going to say they don't know about the sport. What I am going to say is they're not an asset to the sport. The second thing I wanted to make clear was that I know boxing's a tough sport, right? I'm not naive. Obviously, you're going to have a different fan base in boxing than you would have, say, at Wimbledon. It goes without saying. It's a tough sport. You're going to get fans who are quite there'll be a certain level of desensitization. And that's fine, because, you cannot have super sensitive, super quiet fans who have no passion. There's no problem. In fact, it's great to have a passionate audience. That's great. It brings an atmosphere to a big fight. I always prefer to see fights that are balanced, 50-50 crowd. I feel uncomfortable watching a fight where there is a biased crowd. I just feel uncomfortable with it. Now, professional boxers are often trained and train themselves to put up this wall and psychologically be able to handle that. Actually, in my own fight, I had a biased crowd as well, because my opponent had a lot more supporters than I did. Now, I have to say that genuinely didn't bother me, because it was my first fight. I was overcome by excitement with focusing on what I had to do. It honestly didn't bother me. So, but then the difference is, what I was doing was amateur level, and it's a different setup. I think at professional level, when two guys are headlining and the focus is entirely on them rather than being part of a big group of people fighting, then it's a lot more personal. And you'd have to have really tough skin not to be affected in some way by a very hostile crowd. And I think it's more obvious in some countries than others. I think in Britain we can have very partisan crowds and very frankly xenophobic at times to outside fighters. There's other countries that behave similar. Argentina has pretty rough crowds as well. I guess, it's just the nature of this sport. I don't have a problem with fans being partisan, and I don't have a problem with fans being passionate for their fighter. But what I do have a problem with is when they're so partisan that they just disrespect the guy's opponent. It could be in the form of disrespecting the guy's national anthem. It could be like literally throwing things at him as he enters or leaves the ring. That disgusts me. It's not, I don't want to exaggerate, that is pretty rare. It doesn't happen very often, but I've seen it in a few fights. For one reason or another, I think that is a disgusting way to behave. And I really do think that in boxing, people who are serious about preserving the sport need to treat those sort of fans the same way that football treats football hooligans. I really do believe that. Because a fighter puts his life on the line every time he enters a ring, that's a fact. Professional boxers I'm talking about. And it is the closest thing we have to modern day gladiators, so the fans need to respect that fact. I appreciate sometimes there's decisions that make fans unhappy, and as they're paying, they have a right to have some sentiments. They have a right to be angry at a decision if they don't like it, because they've paid money for it, and if they think something is unfair, and let's face it, there are unfair decisions in boxing. So if you see your fighter being the victim of an unfair decision, you're going to be angry, it's normal. But they shouldn't blame the opponent for that. And there's even times when the vitriol is directed at the referee or the doctor. Now, a doctor's job is to look after the health of the fighter, first and foremost. And it's a bit like being a referee. It's a very, very tough job to do, because you have literally someone's health in your hands, and if you make a decision to stop a fight because you think a fighter's injuries are bad enough to do that, you risk the jeers of the crowd and the abuse that comes with that. But if you don't, and let's say the fighter is permanently disabled, then you're also going to get slack for that. So the fighters need to have some fucking comprehension of the roles that people have to perform. Just to be clear, I'm not saying that this should be a polite environment where everyone is... I'm just talking about basic respect here. It's something that really bothers me. It's always bothered me. I think it's great if you have a fight where there's a 50-50 crowd, where there's a lot of passion. Those are the best fights. But I feel uncomfortable when you have a biased crowd, and it pisses me off when I see so-called fans online saying such and such is a bum. Boxing, like any sport, you're going to have people who are more talented than others. But do you have to be so fucking personal about it? Do you have to slander someone in that way by calling them a bum? If you really think fighter A or fighter B is a bum, then you put on gloves and get into a ring, and let's see how well you do. Because there's a very, very, very strong chance that you're not going to be a famous fighter and you're not going to be respected and well known. Because most fighters are not well known, so my point is, you know, I know there's controversial decisions in the sport, and I think it's fine having healthy debate. I have no problem with people debating how good a fighter is, that's fine. You know, it makes the sport interesting. I think it's just part and parcel of any competitive sport. What I have a problem with is when people do it in a way whereby there's just no... It's just so they lower the dialogue to the gutter. And it pisses me off. Now, you get professional boxing magazines like Ring. To their credit, they are very professional in the way they talk about fighters. They never use that sort of language, at least today. I don't know about the past. Certainly in the past, boxing writers were absolutely ruthless. So that's probably something that is a welcome development. I mean, there was a time, for example, when Joe Louis fought, they used to nickname his opponents the bum of the month. Any man that steps into a ring with Joe Louis is no bum. Even if he's outclassed, the same applies to great fighters today. If you step in against a legend, that takes guts. Even if the legend utterly dominates you, there's no shame in that. A recent example would be Chris Algieri, Manny Pacquiao. Pacquiao completely dominated Algieri. But that's no shame on Algieri's part. It just means that probably he took that fight, you know, he shouldn't have taken the fight at that stage in his career. And it was not a good night for him. I just have a problem when it gets so personal when it's really not necessary. I don't have a problem with people not liking a particular fighter for whatever reason. I don't have a problem with people analysing a fighter's skill. What I have a problem with is when they bring the dialogue to the gutter by using slurs like this fighter's a bum, that fighter's a bum. No fighter's a bum. No man that puts on gloves and steps into a ring and risks his health against another man in front of hundreds of thousands of people, possibly millions if it's pay-per-view, that's bullshit. It's something that really bothers me. I guess I shouldn't care too much because, you know, these guys are tough and they don't care what people say online. And the truth is, most of these people are gutless cards because they wouldn't do it themselves. And that's what bothers me. That's why even fighters I don't like, I'm never going to call them a bum. There are fighters I don't like their personality. And I might think in some cases they're overrated. But I'm still not going to call them a bum. That's not an expression I would use for any fighter. There's tactics I don't like. I don't like fighters who continuously fight dirty. I don't like many other things in boxing. But there's a red line, and I think it's crossed way too much. Do let me know your thoughts if you're a boxing fan. This is not about any particular fighter, by the way. This is not intended to be a partisan video. It's just about the nature of this sport, and I think something that needs to fucking change. It depresses me, but it also means I respect fighters all the more. All professional boxers. Might not mean I like them personally, but I still respect what they do.